Thank you. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today about fleet utilisation audits. It is easy for a fleet utilisation audit to fail or deliver poor implementation rates, and that can impact your ability to meet executive order requirements to optimise your fleet size. Our objective today is to inform you about the critical components that will ensure your audit will be a success every time. We assure you'll find the content is informative, and we hope that you walk away with actionable information that will help you improve performance and save costs. The agenda for today will walk you through some basics of fleet optimization audits. We will first cover off some fleet right-sizing facts. Then we discuss some of the common mistakes that other organisations have made with the hope that you can avoid some of these pitfalls. Methodology selection is absolutely critical. Selecting the wrong methodology will undermine your project. We will spend time reviewing different options so you know what methodologies work and which ones consistently fail at implementation. Selling change is where the rubber meets the road. Audit findings need to be implementable, and this is where a project either passes or fails. We'll cover some key points to assist you with your management planning to make sure your audit is a success. We will then illustrate how good data and visuals make all the difference. We will take questions at the end, so please enjoy the presentation.
Thank you, Derek. Hello, everyone. We're excited to have this opportunity to talk to you about fleet optimization. I know most of you are working in a tight budget, and you're being asked to do more with less and still cut back your fleet. We hope that the next 20 minutes helps you gear up to embark on a fleet utilization audit of your own. So what can a fleet utilization audit help you identify? Well, for starters, the ability to optimize vehicle levels will help you eliminate fixed fleet costs and help you meet Executive Order 13514. The cash generated from taking out surplus can provide the funds to make other changes, such as systems improvements or procurement of new, more energy-efficient green vehicles. Often we find that there are ways to merge fleets that make sense and that can help overcome any internal politics. And from a productivity perspective, we often find inefficient work practices and service area overlaps that were not able to be understood or quantified until an audit was completed. And a critical cost component to your day-to-day operations is fuel. An audit will help you quantify excess idling and allows you to take steps to lower that idling, making further improvements in your overall carbon footprint. So when you've completed a data-driven audit and you've found surplus, improved scheduling, reduced wasted driving, and reduced idling, the audit can typically bring you a 20-to-1 ROI. With $50,000 spent on an audit, you could see over $1 million return on investment. Now let's brush up on a few right-sizing decision facts. There are quite different levels of awareness about some fleet cost of ownership that we'd like to share with you. Most managers understand that removing a surplus vehicle provides the largest cost savings. You're removing the fixed cost component for that vehicle, and you'll gain from any monies generated from the sale of your surplus. A well-hidden fact that you may not know is that vehicles regularly follow the same daily, weekly, and monthly usage patterns. This means that the marginal knowledge gain for collecting utilization data after the first month is almost zero. Methodology selection is the difference between project success and failure. You'll find that many methodologies and so-called best practices can't be defended when it comes to findings implementation. And shortcuts are never a good idea. Despite what you may hear, it's not possible to make quality fleet right-sizing decisions without real trip data. You need to be able to convince others that change is required, and without good data, you're fighting a losing battle. Now let's take a look at some common mistakes that organizations make when right-sizing their fleets. You hear it all the time. We need to cut 10% across all departments. It's a common mistake that some executives make, and many don't understand the potential consequences. A new baseline set at current levels with an expectation of a 10% fleet reduction can undermine staff productivity, and it punishes those that have already optimized their fleet. Transportation is the lifeblood of many organizations, so across-the-board cuts can severely affect staff productivity and morale. It can also create a culture of excess, where even your good managers learn to hold surplus vehicles in reserve just in case another decision comes from above to cut vehicle numbers. We understand you're all under a mandate to reduce your fleet size, but doing so without accurate data for each site and department may mean cutting vehicles where they are critical to the mission and leaving some surplus that could have been allocated to departments that need them. It's important to remember that all departments and sites are different. Some will have optimized fleets, while others may have up to 50% surpluses. Some will operate within small areas, and some will serve large rural locations. And the jobs each site does can vary widely. So how do you decide how much to cut for each? Each location needs to be analyzed individually to get the numbers right. Never extrapolate the savings across all sites after a pilot. All sites are different. And using mileage records to optimize your fleet. Mileage does not tell the whole story and can easily be refuted. Low mileage vehicles may be underutilized, or they may be used for short trips and long durations, such as might be found within a small base. High mileage may mean high utilization, but you also might find that trips are poorly planned and that some personnel may be the culprit. And now for a few more potential traps to consider. A common theme we see is a tendency to bundle all fleet activities into one request for proposal. The reality is that fleet right-size audits require a surprising level of skill and technology tools to get it done right. Employing a generalist without these prerequisites is asking for trouble. Always make sure you prepare a separate RFP for fleet right-size audits so you get a consultant that will ensure you a quality result. Procurement also needs to think through and be part of the audit process. It's common to see fleet management being outsourced to a third party before the fleet size has been optimized. So if you have a 1,000 vehicle fleet and you only need 800, wouldn't it be best to remove the 200 vehicles before going to market to get a price? As of 2013, it's our experience from our own studies that 95% of vehicle fleets will find between 14 and 37% surpluses. If you're looking to replace vehicles, do an audit first to determine if more vehicles are needed. It may be that the next replacement cycle is just not required. Also remember to consider a utilization audit 3 to 6 months before a large block of vehicle leases are due for renewal.
Change management is something most managers know they must do, but it's often hard to get it right. Here are some useful tips to make a project implement smoothly. Make sure you have executive buy-in first. Lay out the process and the expected benefits of the audit. Fleet right-size audits present a great savings opportunity without needing to cut services or jobs, and most executives like those facts. Make sure a senior executive sponsors the audit. The support of a senior executive can help make negotiations much more composed and less emotive when change is required. Ensure the staff and unions understand the process and the reason for right-sizing the fleet. The reason may be to cut costs to save jobs, or maybe the government has mandated that the audits are required, so you must comply. Good upfront communication stops misinformation from circulating that can cause unwarranted staff concerns. Make sure the process is as easy as possible and let staff know what they need to do. It is important to remember that some staff have been in the organisation for 20 years or more. Make sure you include their local knowledge into the final report to improve its applicability to the organisation. It is important to always have this discussion after the draft analysis is completed so you can talk about facts rather than perceived utilisation issues. Each assumption you add to a change process provides an opening for those affected by the change to say that your findings are wrong because the assumption does not hold true for us. Assumptions are the reason why most audits fail, so avoid them at all costs. Mileage analysis, fuel analysis, and staff-to-vehicle ratios are good examples where large pieces of the puzzle are missing and assumptions are needed to fill the gaps. These assumptions and approaches may be okay for day-to-day exception reporting, but not for fleet right-sizing. The change management process often requires you to build a business case to get approval. You will need credible quantitative data to do this, otherwise the approval path will be an uphill battle. Once the audit findings are presented, you will find there will be many different utilisation permutations that managers want to investigate. Doing this with a spreadsheet can take months, so make sure your methodology selection includes an interactive analysis tool so managers can understand the rationale for the decisions and quickly complete what-if analysis. Remember that projects tend to lose momentum over time. Every day that is lost having to go back to recut the data is a day that makes implementation that much harder. Some managers often use this tactic to stall the process to decrease the chance that change will happen. Always keep your eye on the ball. It's quite easy to go off mission chasing inappropriate vehicle use. We've seen certain vehicle activity that looks dubious when in fact the staff member was acting in the organisation's best interest. Always focus on the objective, which is to optimise vehicle numbers. Our clients all agree on this point, and it is good advice to those of you who are new to staff management. Once the vehicles are gone, the inappropriate staff use often discontinues due to peer pressure from other staff that need to use that vehicle. And here's the magic formula. Credible data plus transparent process plus understanding equals high implementation rates. Make sure you play fair, use good data, and make sure everybody is on the same page regarding process. It makes the findings implementation so much easier.
As mentioned earlier, methodology selection is a critical step to a good right-size audit outcome. The three areas you need to consider when selecting a fleet right-size methodology are analysis, credibility, and financial factors. Analysis is important from so many perspectives. The method you choose should provide data that can be analyzed in many ways. You want to know the maximum number of vehicles that were in use at the same time for each vehicle type at each site. It's called concurrent vehicle use, and it's a strong indicator of how many vehicles you require. Levels can be lowered further once you understand the vehicle destinations, the time of day or week that the vehicles are used, are trips being planned, which minimizes travel? Is vehicle sharing possible? All of these factors come into the decision-making process. Credibility. You are going to be required to convince people of the need for change. Managers will quite rightly want to discuss individual destinations, so your methodology will need to provide analysis at that level. Otherwise, circular arguments occur and no one can win. Site-specific findings are critical, as mentioned in common mistakes earlier. Vehicle utilization at two sites that do the same activity can be quite different. Make sure your methodology can isolate differences in the application of fleet management policy. The methodology, of course, needs to make financial sense. Is the data collected affordable? We see on some occasions organizations attempt to load handwritten data from thousands of vehicle logbooks onto a computer to audit. It takes an army of data input staff, and we regularly find data accuracy is well below levels required to make robust decisions. Logbook entries show up to 40% discrepancy when compared to GPS data run at the same time. And once the analysis is done, circular arguments start again with, your base data is wrong. And in most cases, the staff are right. Importantly, the methodology you select needs to provide quantitative data to support the change required. Otherwise, you're fighting a losing battle when it comes to justifying why change is necessary. And don't just shop on price. Instead, shop on ROI. Remember, if the price seems too good to be true, it's likely too good to be true. For example, a mileage-based audit with a few interviews might help you reduce your fleet size by 2% at an audit cost equivalent to 2 new cars. Another methodology might cost twice as much, but uses technology and delivers a 25% vehicle reduction. Putting this into context, deploying a quality methodology suddenly makes sense. Which methodology should you choose now that you understand what is required for a successful audit? The table on this slide shows the typical options. It is generally recognized that mileage standards are not a good option. The results are ambiguous and easily misinterpreted. As examples, low mileage may indicate low use, or it could be that the service area is small, so trips are shorter, or that good trip planning is being used, so travel distances are minimized. Parking durations may be long but necessary, in the example of maintenance workers working at a single site. So low mileage vehicles may still be very much in use by their departments. High mileage, on the other hand, may indicate high use, or it could show that poor service area compliance exists. Home base may be in a rural or isolated location. A large factor can be travel to and from home. It's common that more than 50% of mileage on vehicles can be attributed to this one activity alone. Trips could also be very poorly planned. How about staff to vehicle ratios as a methodology? Well, staff to vehicle ratios assume that the same number of vehicles are required for departments with a similar staff count and work type. The ratios can only really be used for exception reporting and only after the vehicle requirements are tailored for the site using a right size audit. Using ratios of other organizations introduces too many variables to credibly enable fleet optimization. Any ratios should be updated with another right size audit every 3 years to allow for changes in variables such as customer visit times, traffic density, and management practices. How about staff interviews? Our company has performed numerous audits where managers thought they might have a few too many vehicles. GPS analysis of real trip data at the site ultimately found surpluses exceeding 40%. It's easy to see why perceptions can be so off track at times. All vehicles are moved around and some may be parked around a site out of view of the fleet manager. BFO certainly advocates the injection of local knowledge into fleet decisions, but it needs to happen after the detailed trip analysis is completed, so you can have meaningful discussions about the observed patterns. Be wary of any fleet consultants that are trying to legitimize their mileage-based findings using staff interviews. The purpose is to try and demonstrate that the staff were consulted, but the reality is that their findings are still based on mileage. How about logbook audits as a methodology? I think we've covered their issues enough to dispel the use of them as a credible source of data. So that brings us to GPS. GPS offers the best solution in terms of data accuracy and ease of analysis. The problem has always been cost. Permanently installed GPS normally incurs an equipment purchase cost, monthly fees, and the cost to install and remove the unit each vehicle replacement cycle. Permanent GPS certainly has its place, but our research has found that it is not ideal if the sole purpose is to right-size your fleet. The reason is that vehicle use typically follows the same daily, weekly, and monthly usage patterns. It makes sense. Bill may perform a certain task every day, and he may have an off-site meeting every Tuesday. An activity that may need to be performed once a month, and every 2 weeks he has to go to corporate office. A 5-week data capture is ideal as it captures these cycles. The 5-week logbook audits have been used for more than 20 years to gather this cycle data. Our GPS audits have now confirmed that this utilization snapshot timeframe is valid. The other important note is that the knowledge gain for a second month of vehicle utilization capture is almost zero. The magnitude of the patterns can change, but the pattern itself is quite consistent. Therefore, it makes sense to just capture 5 weeks with GPS and then uninstall the equipment to stop the monthly costs. The purchase of GPS for fleet right-sizing is not a recommended option. Always work out the total cost of the option, including the monthly payments. you'll see that the permanent GPS has a large negative ROI for fleet right-sizing audits. Given that a 5-week utilization snapshot is all that is needed to determine fleet size with a high level of certainty, a 5-week GPS installation approach seems to make good sense. Bishop Fleet Optimization recognized this gap in the market and introduced a rapid deployable GPS option in 2008. The option bridges the cost gap between telematics and fleet right-sizing audits. The option checks all the boxes in terms of analysis, credibility, and financial criteria, as mentioned earlier. As with any important task, good planning is essential to great results. Now that you've chosen the best method to use to do your audit, it's important that you plan out each additional step. Work with your purchasing department to create an RFP that is specific to the right-sizing project. Too many companies lump this process in with other requirements, such as new fleet management software, gas cards, etc. Do a separate RFP for fleet right-sizing and commence the audit before you launch into any other initiatives so that contracts are not based on inflated vehicle numbers. Plan out how your utilization audit will flow. It's not just important to make sure you do a good job with the audit, but pre-planning the change management requirements for implementation of the findings is also very important. Once you've created your plans, then it's time to put them to work. Identify the surplus vehicles. Plan out which ones to remove from the fleet, and then sell the change to your departments. Last step is to maximize your remarketing returns by deploying a good remarketing strategy for each vehicle. A picture is worth 1,000 words. The data that a GPS-based audit provides can be presented in colorful and meaningful charts, graphs, and snapshots of actual vehicle locations. Google Earth provides wonderful visual perspective of where your fleet has traveled. Geofences can be created at any time to help analyze concurrent utilization and traffic flows from one location to another. It's this type of irrefutable data that helps paint the picture to staff to support your findings. Selling change with data. We mentioned earlier that 5 weeks of data is all that's needed to conduct a meaningful utilization audit. Daily, weekly, and monthly patterns repeat themselves, thus making a second month of data really adds no further value. Concurrent vehicle use, such as in the graph illustrated here, shows that 91 vehicles from 4 different departments, all based at the same location, could be merged into one pool. There was never more than 59 vehicles absent from home base at the same time. That's a surplus of 32 vehicles. Merging different subfleets into combined local motor pools can identify significant savings. Being able to demonstrate the benefits of merging fleets is extremely powerful when selling change to managers. The manager can clearly see the impact of allocating vehicles to a motor pool versus keeping the vehicles allocated to their own department. The case for change is often compelling and cannot be ignored as a cost savings option.
Displaying travel destinations on a geospatial map can be a real eye-opener. GPS outputs can provide possibly the first ever view of where the whole fleet travelled over a 5-week period. In this example, the executive was not aware of the number of visits occurring at the site shown in the yellow oval area in the top left of the screen. Closer analysis revealed that it made sense to put a satellite office at that location to reduce travel and improve response times. We are often asked about after-hours vehicle use. Your analysis will want to review how many vehicles are going home at night and what distances they are travelling. Each red dot on this slide shows the locations where vehicles are being parked at night. Some staff in this case were travelling 60 miles or 100 kilometres each way between home and work. The organisation altered its policy on maximum distance a vehicle could be taken home after reviewing this particular slide.
Okay, we are almost done. So let me give you a quick wrap-up. The first thing I hope you take away from today's webinar is that right-size audits provide the largest opportunity to reduce fleet costs. What used to be best practices no longer hold true, and technology advancements are now making many manual best practices obsolete. Fleet right-sizing is full of many hidden traps, so always ask an expert first. Change management planning leads to high implementation rates and larger savings. And methodology selection is often the difference between project success or failure. Use real trip data to remove assumptions. Visual interactive reports can help sell the change. Audit before procuring more vehicles and audit every 3 years. The 5-week GPS right-size audit provides the highest quality data from which you will find actionable results at an affordable price. And when it comes to remarketing, it's important that you review each vehicle you sell and determine the best channel to optimize your return. Professional remarketing service providers can help you manage all the moving pieces.
Thank you for your time and attention today. We've really enjoyed presenting this content to you, and I'm sure it's been a little bit of an eye-opener for some. We have done a lot of these audits, and I think you can see our experience in what we do comes out in the content that we've provided to you today. Our contact details are on the screen at the moment, so if you'd like to get in touch, by all means get in touch with us via email or via our 855 Optimal phone number. Also visit our website where you can access content. The website provides a URL to a YouTube of this very similar video. Bishop Fleet Optimization is on the GSA schedule, and as far as we're aware, we're the only company that provides this 5-week GPS service with equipment that's specifically designed to do this kind of work. Thank you very much. We'll now open up the floor for any questions that you may have.